More on this, I'm joined by Yuri Levchenko from Kiev. He's a leader of People's Power Party and a former Ukrainian MP. So well placed to talk about this then, Yuri.
Hi.
What's your biggest, yes, thanks for coming on. What's your biggest takeaway from this reshuffle? How do you understand it? How should we understand it?
Well, look, our international viewers must understand that in terms of our internal politics, the government of the Sluga Narodu party, the party of the president, of the Zelenskyy government, is becoming very unpopular. It is becoming very unpopular with every day, more and more, due to their social economic policy. This requires Zelenskyy to react somehow so as to counter this drop in popularity. Basically, this reshuffle is primarily a PR stunt, a PR campaign to try to show the people that there is some sort of change going on, that the government is listening to people's concerns and is trying to somehow improve or the people which are in charge, improve the quality of the people which are in charge, so as to improve the social economic policies of the government. That is the main reason. In terms of the quality of the people themselves, I wouldn't say there's lots of change that really happened. It's pretty much more or less the same people which were in charge or behind the scenes anyway, because you have to realize that in our reality right now, the government is controlled primarily by Andriy Yermak, who is the head of the office of the president, and the people which came as the same as the people which left are pretty much his allies. So this is primarily a PR stunt to try to counter the drop in popularity of the Ukrainian government.
Okay, So I was going to say, so we should understand this more in terms of kind of domestic politics rather than something related to the war. I want to come on to something you've mentioned in terms of allies of Zelenskyy. There had been concerns that there's quite a lot of power coalesced around Zelenskyy himself and around his office. And there were concerns that if he appointed a lot more yes men or yes women, as the case may be, that might get even worse. What do you say? Are these people yes men, or can they hold Zelenskyy to account on things?
Well, as I said, to be honest, it's pretty much in terms of what you just said right now, there's pretty much no change, because the government was already filled with yes men and yes women. I would say that the only substantial change perhaps is in terms of the Minister of Foreign Affairs, who was a bit more independent of the office of the president, and now he has been replaced with someone totally under control of Andriy Yermak. But still, even he was still pretty much in step with whatever the office of the president ordered. So in real terms, nothing has really changed. And I would like to stress that despite the drop of popularity of the government here in Ukraine, it doesn't mean that our allies should support Ukraine less. On the contrary, it is very important for our allies abroad to show support to the Ukrainian people, so that the Ukrainian people maintain at least a bit of a sense of optimism looking into the future, and that our allies do not make a big deal of any of these reshuffles, because once again, these reshuffles are purely an internal PR stunt, nothing more.
Okay.
I would, yeah.
And I just wanted to ask you, moving slightly away from the reshuffle, we had some comments from the Russian President Vladimir Putin earlier saying that Russia has never refused to negotiate with Ukraine, and sort of hinting that there might be a slight change in his directionality. I wonder what you read into those comments, if anything at all.
Well, if our viewers remember, Putin constantly, once every couple of months, over the past few years, even at least over the past 1.5 years, he has regularly put out these sort of feelers, let's call them that. He put these statements where he insinuates that he is supposedly for peaceful negotiations. But at the same time, you have to remember that when does he say this? He says this at the same time that his forces are bombing and killing innocent women and children, are destroying our energy infrastructure, just before the next winter, by the way, and trying to plunge our country into total darkness. So it's a combined effort on his part to force Ukraine, indeed, to force Ukraine into negotiations, but into negotiations totally on Russian terms. Basically, to force Ukraine into a capitulation and not in truthful, peaceful negotiation. So that's why he does it once in every couple of months, whenever Russia increases its bombardment of Ukraine, increases its terrorist attacks. Putin comes out to the press and says, "Well, look, I'm okay with peaceful negotiation," and it's a sort of play also on the sentiments of Ukrainian public opinion. So he's trying to provoke many Ukrainians into saying that, well, we've had enough, we can't take this anymore, all these bombardments. Well, look at this guy, he's proposing a supposed peace negotiation. Let's try it. But if you look at the substance of the negotiations, and by the way, he laid it out quite clearly a couple of months ago when he said that I propose a deal, a so-called deal, whereby Ukraine has to withdraw from all of these 4 oblasts that Russia claims to have illegally annexed and inserted into its constitution. And we're talking about millions of Ukrainians, and we're talking about huge swathes of land. So what sort of negotiations are we talking about? This is not something done or said in good faith. This is just a form of trying to force Ukraine to capitulate.
You said you personally might be okay with negotiations in the right circumstances, Yuri. There have been growing concerns about Ukraine's ability to hold its land, specifically with regards to its eastern front line. How do you assess where the military campaign is right now? Because some people are saying, things are looking quite difficult.
Well, I just like to clarify. I didn't actually say right now. Maybe you misunderstood me somewhere. That I personally, I'm for negotiations. Maybe what I was talking about, you misunderstood me, was that Putin is trying to force the Ukrainian people to be okay with negotiations while trying to make people capitulate, basically. But I mean, if you're any war will end in some sort of negotiation. Yeah, any war ends in some sort of negotiations. Yeah, it just depends on the terms which are put down to each side. So even an unconditional capitulation is still a form of negotiation. Yeah. So what are we talking about? If we're talking about what Putin is presenting currently and what Russia is presenting, this is absolutely unacceptable to Ukraine, because this is the disintegration of the Ukrainian state and basically letting Russia achieve what it wants to destroy the Ukrainian nation and the state as a whole. But were we to talk in the future about, for example, Russia leaving our recognized borders, internationally recognized borders, and withdrawing from our internationally recognized borders, then, of course, this might be some sort of grounds for a negotiation, a so-called negotiation, whereby other terms would be agreed upon with this main term. And now, if you're talking about the situation on the front, you have to realize that, yes, the situation on the front is, of course, very volatile. Some days are worse, some days are better, but it is a bad situation for both sides. Both sides are very close to the, let's say, to the limits of their power, and where our Western allies to help us properly, as opposed to really, putting the brakes on giving us aid, the relevant military aid, and giving it like really bit by bit, drop by drop, and were they not to forbid us from launching long distance attacks on the Russian Federation, then the situation on the front would quite quickly change into our favor. So I would say that this is the primary thing we should be talking about, is that our allies should stop worrying about the so-called escalation and realize that the only way to de-escalate is to actually escalate in the short term. Only if Russia is forced to withdraw, only if the Russian losses will be unbearable, then this war will end. Otherwise, this war will never end. The third option is if Russia will beat Ukraine, which is, of course, unthinkable in terms of the future of our nation and our country.
Okay. Yuri Levchenko from Kyiv, really appreciate you coming on the News Hour today. Thank you.